Hello and welcome to Walking the Wyrd. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm at the seaside and I've come to Highcliffe, which is in Christchurch in Dorset. I'm going to have a look at Highcliffe Castle, which is not actually a castle, but it is architecturally stunning. And I'm also going to have a chat to you about Highcliffe's connections with witchcraft and in particular with Wicca.
Highcliffe Castle was built between 1831 and 1836 by a distinguished diplomat named Lord Stewart de Rothesay. Inspired by his grandfather Lord Bute's earlier mansion, which sat on the same site, Lord Rothesay created Highcliffe Castle with a mix of architectural styles. French medieval, Norman, Renaissance and Gothic Revival features have made Highcliffe Castle look much older than it really is. The stone parapet looking over the grounds is inscribed with Latin from the Roman poet Lucretius. It translates to, "Sweet it is when on the great seas the winds are buffeting the waters, to look from the land on another's great struggles." The stained glass pieces in the Great Hall, which feature the Tree of Jesse, date to 1547, which again contributes to the castle's aged appearance. Lord Stewart lived in the castle for 9 years, until his death in 1845. The castle then passed to his widow, Lady Stewart, who was not as fond of the castle as her late husband. She was quoted as saying that she wished the castle would end up in the sea. Over the years, the castle was rented out to help with its running costs. Many notable visitors, including British royalty, the German Kaiser, and the owner of Selfridges, Harry Gordon Selfridge, all enjoyed living or holidaying in the castle. In 1949, the castle became a children's convalescence home before being taken over by the Claretian Missionary Congregation in 1953. Sadly, the castle saw 2 fires in 1967 and again in 1968, which devastated the building. The castle sat exposed to the will of the elements and vandals until restorations and renovations were carried out by the local council with funding from heritage and lottery grants.
This is definitely my favourite side of the castle. It really shows so well the Gothic Revival style. It's just incredible. So are there any ghosts associated with Highcliffe Castle? Absolutely there are. A maid is believed to have fallen from one of the upper levels of the castle, and her ghost can be seen on occasion looking out of the west tower window. The most reputedly haunted part of the castle is the library. Many of the residents have complained of the library door slamming shut, and one such resident actually wedged the door open with a wooden chock. And when they were in the library, having wedged open said door, the door slammed and the wooden chock went flying across the room. Okay, so I'm now going to make my way into the castle to go and have a look inside. So this used to be the library, which of course I told you was the most haunted part of the castle. So far I've seen a fireplace in every room. But things aren't always as peaceful as they seem here in Highcliffe, and Highcliffe has an association, most unexpectedly, with witchcraft.
Highcliffe's connection to witchcraft comes from one of its most famous residents. Gerald Gardner, known as the Father of Wicca, moved to Highcliffe in 1938 and brought with him a very keen and public interest in witchcraft and in particular Wicca.
So we're going to head down to the beach, to Highcliffe Beach, where I can tell you all about these interesting links with witchcraft. Gerald Gardner was known as the Father of Wicca, or some people called him the Father of modern day witchcraft. He was born on the 13th of June 1884. Gardner was originally from Lancashire, but he spent most of his life living overseas. But in 1936 he came back to England. He lived for a short time in London, and then he retired to the New Forest, specifically to here in Highcliffe in Dorset. It's said that Gardner was initiated into the New Forest Coven in 1939. Gardner described the coven as a witch cult, but this was later discredited by scholars who said that they were really just practicing Old English witchcraft and folk magic. Gerald Gardner went on to form what was known as the Gardnerian tradition of Wicca, which was a mixture of ceremonial magic, which was influenced by the writings of Aleister Crowley, who was a very controversial character, but again, somebody that Gerald Gardner was fascinated with. This attracted mass media attention, and over the years, Gerald Gardner authored many books on the craft. When Gardner returned to Britain in the 1930s, he actually complained that the climate here made him feel sickly. He was referred to a specialist doctor who actually prescribed a good dose of nudism to Gerald Gardner, which he took to very well. Gardner's initiation into the New Forest Coven also raised a few eyebrows. It was said that he was taken to a large house here in Highcliffe known as the Mill House. Gardner was then made to strip naked, which I'm sure he did not object to, and he then took part in the initiation ceremony, which included ritual.
It's important to remember that the Witchcraft Act was not repealed until 1951, so all eyes were on Gardner and his coven.
In one of his books, Gerald Gardner actually divulged some information which probably should have been kept secret with regards to a ritual, a magic spell that was cast by him and the New Forest Coven here on Highcliffe Beach. Gardner said that in 1940 he and the New Forest Coven gathered here on Highcliffe Beach to invoke a cone of power on these shores, a magic spell full of potent power to stop the Nazis from landing on these shores. Gardner said that he and his coven chanted the words, "You cannot cross the seas, you cannot cross the seas, you cannot come, you cannot come." Although Gardner was considered a controversial character by the media more than anything, and actually by some of his own coven, that particularly Doreen Valiente, she was displeased with Gardner for divulging some of their secrets and for talking to the media really about their craft, which was supposed to be secret. But he was quite well respected within the community of Highcliffe and Christchurch. He was a member of the Historic Association for Christchurch, and he also was a member of the Home Guard in the Armoury Department. Sadly, Gerald Gardner died on the 12th of February 1964. He actually had a fatal heart attack at the breakfast table of a ship that he was on board called the Scottish Prince, and he was buried in Tunisia. So to give some perspective, the castle is just up beyond this tree line on the top of the cliff, and here's the beach just at the bottom. What a beautiful place to live, huh? Thought I'd take the stairs back, but there it goes. I counted 112 steps. So I'm just walking right now through Steamer Point Nature Reserve, which is part of Highcliffe by all accounts, and it was so called Steamer Point because steamers used to bring over great pieces of French masonry which were used to build Highcliffe Castle. Well, thank you so much for joining me here in Highcliffe in Dorset. I really hope you enjoyed having a look at the beautiful castle, the grounds, and also Highcliffe Beach. If you're not subscribed to my channel already, please do consider doing so, and I look forward to seeing you all again on the next Weird Walk.